Hello, mentors. Welcome to another training by Education Northwest that we've turned into a webinar for your enjoyment, entitled, What Do I Do Now? What to Do When Your Mentee Experiences a Crisis. Crisis is singular, and then crises is plural. We're going to use that a few times. So this webinar can help you prepare for and think through difficult situations with your mentee. So when you're encountering those in your real relationship, you'll have thought through some things. So what are the goals of our webinar? First and foremost, we want to understand how to assess levels of crisis and take appropriate action so that in the moment you don't freeze up when a situation arises.
The second one is we're hoping that you understand the program and mandate reporting policies. So we're making sure that you truly understand what is expected of you. That way, if you ever do or have any questions, you know how to handle that or who to contact in case of those.
Learn how to talk with your mentee about staying safe. This is an important conversation, but it's not the easiest to have necessarily, so we'll give you some tips for that.
Learn about community resources and referrals. So we have tons of resources available throughout the community as well as with Bethany. We're hoping to share those with you and allow you to know what is available.
And lastly, to understand the importance of self-care and how to find support when dealing with mentees in crisis. So we want you to know how to take care of yourself when your mentee is going through a difficult situation. And I rudely forgot to introduce us. So I'm Joey Hulse, the Refugee Mentor Coordinator, and I'm here with
Amanda Jones, who is the Services Mentor Coordinator.
Excellent. So first and foremost, crises.
Yes. So the worst feeling is not knowing how to help someone that you care about. And so a big fear for the mentors is not knowing what to do for your mentee. If crisis was supposed to come up, or not supposed to, did come up, it's important for you to know how to handle that situation rather than panicking and handling it incorrectly. So with that, it's important to consider your role as the mentor. What exactly is expected from you and what isn't, and how can you help in the best way rather than how can you just help quickly. So we're going to be talking about the assessing, making decisions, and taking care of yourself and your mentee rather than just solving it for the quick moment there. And we're hoping that we will be able to show you some ways to handle the situation that will, in the long run, help out more.
So what is a crisis? Before we go through some examples that we have here, just take a moment to think about, maybe pause the webinar and think about what you consider a crisis or what might be a crisis for your mentee. All right, so here are some examples that we came up with. So there's a lot here. Loss of a family or friend, divorce, loss of a home, domestic violence, child abuse, severe violence, physical or mental illness, suicidality, drug-related problems, legal problems or incarceration, unexpected pregnancy, breakup or unhealthy relationships. So, and those are just a few. Obviously, you could extrapolate a lot more of what a crisis is. And I hope you guys came up with some of your own or thought through some crises that your mentee has faced personally.
Yeah, so now we're going to talk about some types of concern. I'm just going to list the three that we have now, and then we're going to go into a little bit more detail after we list these. So the first one is delicate topics. Sorry about that. The next one is issues of concern, and the last one is crises. So the very first one we're going to talk about is delicate topics. The mentors should be trained to handle these topics directly with the youth, and so that's where it comes in handy for you to know how to handle that, as well as be how you are handling it. So come up during discussions. Something that might come up during your time with your mentee is discussions between both you and the mentee. And with that, it might just be conversations on things that you maybe aren't familiar with talking about or that you were comfortable with, or it might be their chance to talk about what's going on in their life that shouldn't be. And some caution should be taken there. With these topics can strongly affect the relationship. So it's important for you to let your mentee know right off the bat that you are maybe the reporter, and whatever they do say to you, if it's going to cause them harm or put somebody else in harm, that you are legally required to report that. And so with that, that's going to cause probably some boundaries and cause your mentee to maybe not talk to you about as much or open up as much just because they aren't wanting you to report that. Or it might be a chance for them to finally feel safe and have somebody that's there to report it for them. And so with that, it's important that you remind your youth that whenever a conversation that sounds or is going in the direction of being something really important like this, that you are, again, repeating that you are a mandated reporter, that you do have to report whatever is told to you. And so asking them and making sure that what they're telling you is the truth is very important, because as you're going to report it, and then it's going to be brought up to the youth and to whoever caused whatever the topic is on. Confidentiality takes precedence, and so you can report that, and your name will not be brought up in the reporting of that. However, your youth will probably know that it was you that reported it, and just because you might be the only person that was told on that topic. And so just it's important to make very clear to your youth that, again, you are having to report that because you aren't wanting to upset the youth, you're not wanting them to not be able to trust you. So just by being very open with that, it's going to cause them the opportunity to share, to open up with what they're wanting to open up with, as well as know that maybe they aren't wanting to talk about certain things. You should still seek support and feedback from a supervisor. And so with that, it's just saying if you do ever have to report something, it's important to contact your mentor coordinator and let them know so that they're in the loop, just in case you give their name to CPS when you call, and then they don't get a phone call and have no idea what you're talking about. This keeps everybody in the same loop, as well as they're able to better help you and make sure that you're comfortable and that you're doing things that you are comfortable doing, or if you're needing advice on whether or not you do need to report that. That is our job. We're just going to help you as best as we can.
So why we have that cringy face for delicate topics is because these can be awkward and they might be something you're not exactly comfortable talking about, but these ones are kind of like the lowest on the scale, going from delicate to issues of concern to crises. So some of these delicate topics might indeed lead to something that you have to report about, but for the most part, these are going to be the things that are a little bit uncomfortable, but you don't necessarily have to report. So some examples of delicate topics that might come up in conversation with your mentee: sex, peer pressure, hygiene, behavior of the mentee, alcohol and drug use, school performance, how are they doing in different classes, self-image, if you notice that they have really low self-esteem or think pretty negatively of themselves, personal insecurities, socioeconomic status, cultural identity, race. You could go on. And so conversations, like I said, about these topics are sensitive, potentially awkward, but these are definitely things that you can have open discussions with your mentee about depending on your comfort level.
Yeah, the next one is issues of concern. And so with this, it's simply meaning if anything must be brought up that your mentee is telling you and it kind of is concerning to you and you're not really certain if it's something that's safe or if that they should be a part of or if they should be doing it and you don't know how to go about that, always report these concerns to your mentor coordinators. Again, it is our job when we work closely with the youth, and so and we have a pretty good idea of whether or not it needs to be reported, or if there are issues that we can kind of resolve on our own. And so with that, it's really important that you are reporting those concerns to us, just so we can better help you and the youth. Significant implications for the life of the mentee is a big reason to ever report any of the concerns to us. If it's going to cause harm to the youth or to anyone that the youth comes into contact with, it's going to be an issue, especially a concern, and you're going to want to deal with that right away. Maybe you have something they tell you something that's not necessarily going to require direct intervention. It's not going to require having to actually report that or to have us all come and sit down together, rather we can just kind of tell you how we would suggest handling that and you can do it on your own. That might be better just in the case that it would cause the youth to still trust you because it's still only between you and the youth rather than bringing in outside sources. Often it's ongoing conditions that mentors can be trained and supported to set without having or accept without having judgment. So with that, it's important that we and becoming comfortable with hearing certain things and knowing how to handle that without you kind of giving off that judging vibe to the youth, which would cause them maybe not to open up to you, maybe not tell you some of the things that they're involved in, just the fact that they know that you might judge them and they won't feel comfortable talking to you about it, and then they have no outside resources, no support, and no one telling them, or giving them positive advice. And don't focus too much on the youth changing behavior. With that, just they could become so wrapped up or involved in something, and with that, they're just kind of needing you to help guide them through that. We're going to be talking about or giving some types of different concern that do come up with some of the youth that we serve. And later on, we actually will go through some role playing as well, where we talk about some of these things and how to handle them. And so it might not be something that you can help with right away, but it is something that you can help with over time. And so with that, with the changing behavior, with them opening up to you with all these certain things, it's all stuff that's going to be able to be helped, whether it's right away or in a couple of weeks or in a couple of months or maybe even in a year. But these are all things that we can work on, whether you're getting advice from us on how to handle it, we're having an intervention where we're all doing it together, or we're having to report that to a higher up agency there.
So once again, an issue of concern is sort of a level up from a delicate topic. So whereas a delicate topic might be something that you feel awkward to talk about with your youth, or you don't exactly know how to handle it, an issue of concern is something that you're like, oh boy, I need to report this back to my coordinator. This is important information for them to know, to be able to best address the situation in the youth's life, whether that's through the case manager or a therapist. So some examples of issues of concern include these listed here: unsafe sex, fist fighting, minor delinquent behavior like graffiti or petty theft, gang affiliation, or even an interest in getting involved in gangs or talking about gangs a lot in a way that's or introduced personally by the mentee. So obviously there's a lot of more specific incidents inside of these kind of broader topics, but those are some examples of issues of concern that you would want to report at least back to your mentor coordinator to decide next steps.
Yeah, so crisis requiring intervention. So these are things that are definitely going to need to be talked about and figured out. Just in the fact that it could eventually cause, or not even eventually, it could immediately cause danger to the youth or to somebody else. And so these are situations of great concern that may require direct and immediate intervention, where it's just we are going to meet up with the youth, with maybe the guardian, and we're going to have a conversation about it, because you should never be expected to handle the crises alone. We don't want you to feel all this pressure and have all the answers, because you might not have any idea on how to do that. And so something that the youth might tell you may need to be reported to either the city or county by law. And with that, you're becoming a mandated reporter. You might not really necessarily feel comfortable reporting that or know how to go about doing that. And so if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to your mentor coordinator. We can help walk you through the steps and tell you what's going to happen the minute that you call. What steps are going to be taken, what you need to know, what you need to be able to tell them, what you need to write down, what other information you might need to get from the youth in order to accurately report that and have it be as successful as possible with the reporting. Another thing is if you're not comfortable reporting that, you can always talk to us and we can report that for you. What would happen though is we would always put your name in there as a person of contact, and then see, or the whatever agency that we have to report it to, they might call you back and just kind of get the story again, just so that way they have the most accurate story of what happened. We might require thorough or direct intervention by the mentor program, so we might have to step in, like I just said, with helping you where we all meet again, and talk about it with the youth, with you, if you're not comfortable doing it alone. Because, like we said, up there in the fold, you're not expected to handle the crisis alone. We're here to help you and make this as easy for you as it is for the youth. Lastly, sorry, they often require collaboration with the mentee's family. We don't expect you to reach the mentee's family ask them to come into this intervention. If say the youth is continuing to get into fights at school, we're not expecting you to call the family and be like, hey, your kid is getting in a lot of fights and we want to figure out how we can get through to them to have them stop doing this. We're not expecting you to, because that can be messy, so that's where we come in, trying to help set that up and making sure that everybody is wanting to be there for the right reason, and that's to help the youth.
So obviously we are there to support you throughout all of these issues, but especially when it comes to a crisis, which is something that you are immediately discussing with your mentor coordinator, because there's probably going to be some level of intervention that you may or may not be a part of. So some of examples of these crises, so things that you would need to report immediately, would be child abuse and neglect. Obviously, as a mandated reporter, that is the highest one on the list, and we'll talk a little bit more about mandated reporting in the next slide. Abusive relationships, pregnancy and STDs, health problems, drug and alcohol abuse or dependency by your youth close to them, severe violence that they're either experiencing or that they're witnessing, or extended delinquency, so getting in trouble with the law, depression and suicidality, mental illness, and other trauma.
Bethany Christian Services, other agencies, you are required to become a mandated reporter. And what that means is if you have any concern of suspected abuse or neglect of your mentee, must immediately be reported to program staff, where then we, first off, that allows us to know the story and we can tell you if that's actually happening, or if we had no idea about that, or if it has happened in the past and you do need to report it. Basically, it's keeping us informed as well and keeping us updated and allowing us to help you go through the steps of reporting, because it can be scary and kind of if you've never had to report something. But it is so important, and I stress it so much, to make sure that you are reporting something if something is happening to the youth, or even if you suspect it, you need to contact us, because the data reporter is a very serious thing, and if you don't handle it correctly, it can kind of come back and bite you in the butt sometimes. So it's just really important to just take the safe steps and make sure you're doing that. So what happens is you call us or you email or whatever, let us know. I believe you have up to 24 hours once the youth tells you, once you suspect whatever is happening to the youth, you have up to 24 hours to report that. And what you do, you have to report suspected child abuse or neglect is to call the 12, it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, statewide child abuse reporting hotline at 1-800-942-4357. Or you can directly report by locating your county's DHS office, and the contact information is right there on your screen, so if you want to pause it and write it down and keep it somewhere. But also this is you call after, you have up to 24 hours to call, and then once you call, they're going to ask you some questions about the youth. Usually it's their name, their age, if you have their address, their phone number, if you know where they work, if you know if they're living with your family, immediately, if they're living with a friend or significant other, those types of things, or a family member. And then from there, you tell them what you found or what you were told. You make sure that you tell the youth is aware that you are contacting them, so it's important to make sure that the youth knows, or that you are double checking with you that it's okay for you to report it, because they might just have said something and not actually meant it, or you do need to report it regardless. And so then with that, you are going to fill out a form. It's 3200 form, and you have to get the log number for that, which all you do is you ask the person on the phone just for the log number, they'll give it to you. That is key to have, just because that way you can write it down, and if you were to ever have to show up in court to back this up, you now have this number that says that you reported it and you did everything correctly, and then they can't come back and affect you in any way or shape. So you fill out that form, you have up to 72 hours after you call to fill out this form and get it sent back to them. It's all found online, or if you have trouble finding that, just let us know and we can help you fill that out. All that we need you to do in order to help you successfully fill that out is, again, that log number. But then after that, we can help you fill that out.
So that was a lot of information, but feel free to let us know if you have more specific questions about that. And obviously that's why your first step in this situation of like having to fulfill your duties as a mandated reporter is to contact us, and we can help guide you through that process. So we're going to do a little activity here to visualize how can I be helpful if my mentee is facing a crisis. So to do some personal reflection first and foremost, think about it or experiencing a crisis yourself. How did you cope with that situation? So what helped you remain calm or to become more relaxed during the stressful time? Were there any people in your life during that time who helped you? Going through and I'm reading the questions, and you can reflect on these questions as we go. Imagine the tone of voice of the person who was helpful. Did they respond? Were they upset when they responded to you? Were they angry? Were they understanding? What was the tone of their voice? What did the person say or do that helped? Did they give you a hug? Did they give you your was going to be fine, or did they tell you that they were there for you to support you? What kind of physical surroundings made you feel better? For example, being inside, being outside, in a quiet space, with other people, or alone? What activities or actions did you take that helped you to cope, including counseling, sports, music, hobbies, etc.? So maybe a crisis that you've gone through or a time when you were extremely stressed was a bad car accident that you were recovering for, or maybe a family member getting in a bad car accident. Maybe a crisis was the loss of a close friend or a family member. So in thinking about a crisis, a personal crisis, we're going to also talk about coping mechanisms.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a list of some coping examples, and then I want you to pause the screen for a moment and think about which ones are appropriate to share with the youth and which ones you should probably stress to the youth that probably aren't the best ways to go about coping. So talking through the situation with a close friend, crying, journaling, distractions, so reading, watching TV, playing games, exercising, so going for a run, going swimming, playing a sport, punching something, yelling at people, and the last one is go for a drive. So again, pause the screen for a moment, go ahead and read through those again, and just visualize crossing a couple of those out, maybe if you don't think that they'd be the best coping examples. All right, so I hope that you all were able to realize that punching something maybe isn't the best coping example, as well as yelling at people. Those are not very positive examples, and that's what we're trying to teach the youth that we're mentoring. And so I would just definitely recommend doing any of the above things, or maybe some other examples that we don't have listed here.
The go for a drive one obviously depends on the age of your mentee, so use your discretion with that one.
Yes.
So we'll talk a little bit here about the importance of listening when it comes to your mentee experiencing some sort of hard situation in their life. Obviously, this is crucial in building a trusting relationship. If your mentee starts opening up to you about something that they're facing in their life, and you're on your phone, or you're not really paying attention, you're distracted by the TV at the restaurant or something, that can be extremely hurtful. So be really intentional about when you're having conversation with your mentee that you are tuned in, that you are focused on them. And if they start opening up to you about something that you are uncomfortable with or seems difficult to you, to just remain calm and to remain open. Don't panic in that moment. You're not going to have to. The worst thing that could happen is you could say something that would hurt them, or you could make a snap decision that would in the end be a bad decision. So your best option is to just remain calm and to really try to think things through and just focus on listening to what they're telling you. It can be really scary for a young person to share difficulties with an adult. So they might start by only dropping some hints or kind of skirting around the edges of a topic. But you might need to pick up on some of those signals and then ask some questions about that. When they're doing that, they're trying to see if they can trust you. And so recognizing those signs or the hints that they're leaving can help you to be able to not pry, obviously, but to ask some crucial questions that will help them to open up. There's a cool Ernest Hemingway quote that I found. When people talk, listen completely. Most people never listen. So think about that as you're mentoring and the importance that can have in your mentoring relationship.
Yeah, so now we're going to give you some tips for helping someone in a crisis. So the first one is to sit at eye level with the person, making sure that you're making eye contact with them, that you're not looking down at them. Really helps them feel a little bit more comfortable and shows that you are wanting to listen and figure this out with them. The second one is don't act surprised, shocked, or angry about the crisis. Be honest and understanding that it is a difficult situation for them. So by you being surprised or shocked or angry about what they're telling you is going to make them instantly shut off and not want to talk to you about it. So as long as you're just being calm, you're giving them your honest opinion, and you're being understanding and not showing judgment or anger, it's going to help the situation be a bit more comfortable for them. Remain calm and compassionate throughout the entire time. Don't pressure the youth to tell them what they're wanting to tell you, and ask open questions, which can kind of secretly get them to tell you more than what they're wanting to in certain cases. I know my parents did this to me all the time, and so it does work. So by allowing the youth to tell you what they're wanting to tell you, is going to first off make them comfortable or make them more comfortable to tell you things. And then if you're asking open-ended questions, it's going to allow them to really start thinking about what's going on and maybe talk about it a little bit more. And don't make judgmental statements. Don't make judgmental statements about the situation. So, like, how could they do that? Or aren't you angry? Or just anything that's going to make them really uncomfortable about it and make them feel like you're just judging everything that's going on is going to make them again not want to talk to you about the crisis.
Acknowledge that the youth trusted you enough to tell you. This, like we said earlier, this probably wasn't easy for them to do or to open up with you about. So acknowledge to them that it's important to you that they trusted you and that it really means a lot. Reflect back to the youth what feelings they are expressing. So this is a classic if you've done any social work study or know about social work. This is a classic social work practice. So by reflecting back what they are saying, not putting words in their mouth. So sounds like you were really scared in that situation. If they had said things about like, I was terrified, or, I was really scared. So in that way, you're affirming them without putting words in their mouth of things that they were feeling and their emotions. Affirm the youth for using their coping skills and making it through the situation. They're having this conversation with you and telling what they endured. So they made it, they survived the situation, and that's a big deal. And so you want to remind them that they're a strong person and that they're here at this moment. They survived the situation, and they're going to continue to make it, and you can help them. Be honest about what you need to do with the information. So Amanda touched on this a lot when we were talking about mandated reporting. But if you have to report, so if you know this is something you're going to have to report back to program staff or obviously back to a higher level, make sure you let them know that and why. Out for their best interest and that you really care about them and that you want to help them in the situation, then they're going to be more understanding. They may still be upset in the moment, but if they know that you really care about them, then they're going to understand why you have to do that. And you can also tell them that it's part of being a mentor. It's part of your role as a mentor. And then lastly, brainstorm options with the youth and offer appropriate resources. So this is another classic thing about counseling if you've done any study, but you want them to come to their own solutions. Obviously, you can offer some suggestions yourself, but you don't want to just give them the answer, so to speak. You want them to come up with something that is a good solution for them. So say, together we're going to find some help. We're going to get help for you in this situation. What do you want to happen? Give them a sense of control when you're asking about what you want to do for next steps. All
right, so talking about safety with your mentee. I know that, and when I was in grade school, that we always talked about, the fire drill or the tornado drill, and we always knew where we were going to go in case of an emergency. So if there were to ever be a fire in the school, I would know exactly where to go if I was, at that location of the school, or if I was in my classroom, or if I was in the gym, kind of a thing. And so with that, this is kind of similar to the fact that we are wanting you, if your mentee is ever in danger, or is not really sure how to go about being safe in their community, in their home, in their school, wherever, they have a plan for staying safe, that they know where to go when they are in danger, that they know what to do when they're not comfortable. And so with that, you might be starting the conversation with, it's really important to think about how to stay safe at your home and in the community. It's going to be important for them to know that you care enough to plan out a safety drill for them. An example might be that I want to help you think of places to go to be safe and people in your life that can help you. Last week you told me you were afraid of some of the older boys in your neighborhood who have been threatening you. It's a good idea for people to have a plan ahead of time so you will know what to do if something happens. So all we're saying is, if your youth is telling you that they don't feel safe, say on their walk home from school. Maybe you can go for that walk, go to drive to the school, walk back to their house, and think of together some different ways that maybe they take a different path. Maybe they could, or maybe there's always like a neighbor that's outside at that same time. Maybe they can go and just kind of talk to you for a little bit until the other youth or whoever it is that's bullying them is no longer around in the area. This is just going to help them feel more comfortable walking home, as well as feel that they have a plan and different ideas to use in case they may ever need to put those into action.
So we're going to go through a worksheet now. Obviously, there's not a printed handout for you guys, but we can get that to you if you'd like to do this with your mentee. Just thinking about steps for planning safety with your youth. So first and foremost, on this worksheet, you could fill it out together. We'll just talk through it now. You would say, let's think of people that you can call for help. So obviously 911 for emergencies. If they don't know it at this point, you better drill it into their heads. And then think of 4 other people, important people in their lives, and write down their full name and their phone numbers. So actually take the time to write down people they can contact in an emergency, and tell them to keep that paper in their wallet, purse, etc., or in their backpack. So maybe you want to get an index card and have them to carry that around. Add your name if you feel comfortable. You can, if they say, I put you down as one of my emergency contacts and you feel comfortable doing that, then obviously you can go ahead and include your own name and contact information. And then talk through these other questions with them, and write down their answers if you think that's important for them. So number 2, if you feel unsafe in your neighborhood, where can you go to ask for help or to use the phone? Sorry, we're missing an H there. So can they talk to one of your neighbors who, like Amanda said, maybe there's a neighbor who's always out after school doing yard work. Can they go, do they feel comfortable to go talk to that person or to ask to use a phone in case of an emergency? Or do they pass by a gas station that they could go in and ask to use the phone? Number 3, if you feel unsafe at school, who can you talk to? Identify at least 2 people, whether that's a teacher they feel comfortable with, maybe it's a security guard, maybe it's someone from the lunchroom. 2 people at school that they feel comfortable talking to in case of an emergency. Number 4, if you ever feel unsafe at home, where can you go in the house to stay safe? Identify at least 2 places. So maybe it's their room, maybe their room has a lock on it, or maybe in case there was some kind of physical altercation, maybe they have a closet they can go into, or maybe it's their bathroom. Maybe they have a bathroom connected to their bedroom that they can lock the door to. So where can they go within their house to stay safe in case of an emergency? If you can leave the house, where will you go to use the phone? So again, thinking about, do I have a neighbor who knows me, who I would feel comfortable to go and ask to use a phone? And number 5, remind the mentee that they can always talk to you or Bethany's staff if they feel afraid, but if they're in immediate danger, they should call 911. So yes, you're obviously a resource and you can help out in case of, something maybe not as serious as domestic violence. But if there is ever a crisis as significant as that their first choice should be to call 911. So we're gonna talk through some role play scenarios. And in these scenarios, we want you to especially focus on practicing the components of the session, especially the 10 tips for reacting to a crisis. So practice with another person. So if you don't have another person around, then pause this webinar and do this part later. But get another person with you. You'll be the mentor in the scenario, and they will be the mentee. And what you're going to do is think about who else you may need to ask for assistance in this situation, or how you would handle these situations if it ever came up during mentoring. So we'll go ahead and do the first scenario. We'll first introduce the mentor's perspective, and then we'll have you pause the webinar, and then we'll show you the mentee's perspective.
All right, so the very first scenario is you call your mentee to set up a time to get together. You hear yelling and a baby crying in the background, and something that sounds like dishes breaking. A few days later, you pick your mentee up for an outing and notice they're quieter than usual.
Now, this is going to be the mentee's perspective. So if you want, you can choose, if you're the mentor in the scenario, you can plug your ears or whatever and just let the other person hear this one, or it doesn't really matter. You can talk through the scenario no matter what. So the mentee's perspective: your mom and stepfather have been fighting a lot lately. They got into a loud physical fight last night, and the police came and took your stepfather to jail. So go ahead now and pause this webinar once you both have your roles, and just role play the scenario and how would you react as a mentor, and what are the different crisis coping skills that you could put into place. And when you're done, we'll move on to the next one. Scenario 2. You come into the school where you meet your mentee, and their teacher pulls you aside. The teacher tells you that she's worried about your mentee, who has been crying all day. You go into the lunchroom and see your mentee sitting by themselves with their lunch untouched.
All right, so now this is the mentee's perspective. And like Joy said, you can do the exact same thing for this one. Your mom has a new boyfriend you don't like. He has been staying the night at your house, and you don't feel comfortable around him. You don't want him to date your mother. So take a few minutes and discuss this with each other, or think about it on your own. All right, the third one. You haven't been able to reach your mentee for a few weeks, and usually you meet weekly. After leaving several messages, he finally calls back and says that he would like you to come by after school later this week to see him, but he is staying at his aunt's house. You wonder what has been going on with him.
So now for the mentee's perspective: your mom decided to enter drug rehab after the state threatened to take her kids away because of her substance abuse. You are worried about your mom, are not sure what drug rehab is, and wonder when you will see her again. You don't like having to share a room with your cousins. So take a couple minutes to role play through that scenario, or think about it on your own. All right, so thanks for doing that. I hope it was helpful. Obviously, it would be better to be able to do that in person in a group, but I hope that you were able to at least think through those scenarios on your own, or to work through it with someone else in your life. So in each situation, well, first and foremost, let's label what each scenario was. So the first scenario, parents, a big enough fight that the stepfather was taken to jail. That was a crisis requiring intervention. So that is obviously domestic violence, and that is something that needs to be, if your mentee opened up to you about that, that needs to be immediately reported to your coordinator. The second one, the mom having a new boyfriend that the mentee doesn't feel comfortable with and doesn't like, that is an issue of concern. So it's not as significant level of threat as a crisis, but it is something that you may want to bring up with your mentor coordinator, or that you could address with your youth and talk through with them. But it would be good to notify staff about it. It probably won't need to be reported at a higher level. And then the last one of the mom entering drug rehab, them moving in with their aunt, that's also an issue of concern. So it might not require direct intervention by the program, but it's probably something that you're going to want to bring up with your mentor coordinator, because it involves a housing location change for your youth, as well as obviously a new scenario with who you're going to be interacting with, having to get the contact information from the aunt, and knowing the timeline for how long the mom is going to be gone and that sort of thing. Program staff may be able to provide you with that, with those answers. So in your role playing, think about these questions. How did the mentor react to the situation? Did they use the coping mechanisms that we discussed earlier? went through and just determined what each one of them were, if they were issue of concern or a crisis requiring intervention. Who did the mentor talk to, if anyone, about the situation? Was a report filed with DHS? How was the mentoring program involved? And how was the family involved? Who did the mentee identify as an emergency contact for the situation? What role might that person play? Awesome. So thanks for thinking about those questions too. Hope that was useful for you to think about some practical scenarios.
All right, so we didn't forget about you guys. We also want you to make sure that you're taking some self-care. When something like this happens to you, it can cause a lot of stress on you as well, and put you in a tough place, and kind of make you take on a lot. And so with that, you need to find support yourself. So maybe you need to refer to the Coping with Crisis list, just so you can also figure out ways to help cope with whatever it is that's causing you to need to kind of unwind and breathe and figure out what the next step is. As well as call your mentor coordinators at any time to process or to ask for help. This is a big thing sometimes, and it really is helpful to process what is going on and how we can help you make it easier, because for one, it's our job, but two, we care about you as just as much as our youth, and we're wanting this to again, benefit both of you, and not just youth, and not just you. We're here to help you both. And so, in any way that we can provide a little bit of help, or maybe a lot, that's what we're wanting to do.
Absolutely. So we went over a lot of information today. We hope you guys found it helpful. Go ahead.
If you need to process any of this, definitely reach out to us. As again, like I said in the slide before, it's our job. We're wanting to, and this was a lot of information. And if you have any questions about any of it, especially the mandated reporting, I know I was throwing out a lot of numbers and information. So definitely reach out if you have additional questions on that.
For sure. Yeah. No, and that's all I was going to say. Crises that your mentees face can be really heavy, and this can be a heavy topic even to do a webinar about. So feel free to send us an email or give us a call if you want to process through some things, or if you have any suggestions for us. Thanks again to Education Northwest for this training that they put together. The author was Maja Ryan, so thank you for your work in this. Once again, I'm Joey Hulse, the Refugee Mentor Coordinator. It's been great having you guys tune in for these webinars. You can also look out for a quiz that will be coming soon, accompanied with this webinar, that you can get credit for your mentor training hours. But thanks, everybody.
Bye.